Hello again, everyone. This is Chris Scherer. That's Robert Harding. And this is the Citizen Sports Weekly for May 15th, 2014. Got the name right.
Nailed the date. I'm going to start doing boom
well,
every time you get the date right.
Boom. I was just going to say that. So, anyways, Robert and I are here to discuss a couple sports topics that are on our minds for this week. Last weekend was the NFL draft, one of our favorite times of the year. I think we enjoy watching the draft, especially when our teams...
this is the most optimism Bills and Dolphins fans have throughout the course of a year.
It's pretty sad,
it's around the draft.
It is.
Look at all the great players we have.
Well, you can say that, but I'm a little bit hesitant to say that yet because I have a list of the Dolphins draft picks here. I hate to say it, but I didn't memorize every name and every school and every position. Call me a slacker as a fan, but I don't know every player, where they're from and everything off the top of my head, although I can talk about them a little bit. But, last week we talked about the first-round picks, and I went into Juwan James, offensive tackle, who's going to be playing right tackle for the Dolphins out of Tennessee. Thought it was a solid pick, maybe a little bit of a reach. But, if the guy's a starter on day one and he's a solid player, and you got him at 19, you really can't complain too much. Dolphins picked a wide receiver out of LSU, Jarvis Landry, with a second-round pick. Again, a solid pick. He's not a burner, more of a slot guy. He's going to be your third or fourth receiver. Not going to challenge, hopefully not challenge Hartline and Wallace for starting spots. Second round pick, again, maybe a little bit of a reach, but okay. The third round and afterwards when we start to get into some fun stuff here. They picked an offensive tackle by the name of Billy Turner out of North Dakota State. That is the team I believe is used to be 1AA, now it's called the FCS, Football Championship Subdivision Series, and was a solid performer for them. And then after that, they picked Walt Aikens, a cornerback out of Liberty, who had started, I believe, at Illinois, but was dismissed from the team for possessing a stolen laptop, and went to Liberty so he could play immediately. So this guy, you could say, was a Division I talent, but he was a 1AA player. And then they picked Arthur Lynch, a tight end out of Georgia. There's a school that we've heard of. I guess the guy's a good blocker, might have hands, we'll see. But again, Charles Clay's your starting tight end. This guy's going to be coming off the bench. And then the last three picks, Jordy Tripp, outside linebacker, Montana, again a 1AA school. Matt Hazel, a wide receiver. Coastal Carolina, another 1AA school. Again, these are guys that I think are going to be special teams contributors. And then your last pick, from that wonderful football factory that we know as Marist College in beautiful Poughkeepsie, New York, Terrence Fede, F-E-D-E, a defensive end from the Red Foxes. I think Marist is the Red Foxes. And I think of Rick Smits when I think of Marist. He was a pretty good basketball player for the Pacers back in the 80s and 90s. But Marist is not a football factory, much like my alma mater, Albany, is not a football factory. Although Miami did have, I believe, had one player signed to a free agent contract. So, but anyways, this guy's a defensive end out of Marist, and I have to scratch my head. I mean, look, there's nothing wrong with going below Division I to draft a player or two. I know the Bills drafted Andre Reed out of Kutztown State. This guy's a Hall of Famer.
He didn't turn out too bad.
No, he was a Hall of Famer and a great talent. So sometimes you can find some hidden gems in 1AA. But when most of your picks are from 1AA, I got to admit, I scratch my head. It's like, what is this guy doing? What is Dennis Hickey doing, the Dolphins GM, drafting a lot of guys from below 1A? Now, again, these guys could be great players. You don't know. I mean, you're not going to know until you get them out in the field and they strap on the pads and put on the helmet and buckle the chin strap and get out there and start playing. And I don't know. I mean, like I said, we'll see. It's a wait-and-see draft. I mean, I always feel it takes 3 to 4 years to fully evaluate a draft to see whether it was a good draft or bad draft. So, but on the surface, I mean, we don't know. It's just a one big question mark. Yes, you solved your need at right tackle. That's great. You needed that. You got your offensive line a little more solidified. And yeah, you signed some guys in free agency that you think are going to be better contributors because they are NFL players. They're proven. But the draft, where you kind of build your foundation, I don't know. I just really have no clue. And I'm not worried, but I would say concerned is a better word. So, all right. Enough of me. Let's get into the Bills. Robert's got the Bills analysis here.
Well, of course, everything starts with Sammy Watkins. They gave up a lot to get him. We talked about that last week on Sports Weekly. That was the bold move. Chris initially called it a desperate move.
Yes, desperate.
But we'll see how it turns out for Buffalo. It's a bit of a gamble on a playmaker that they needed, and the gamble part comes in because they did give up next year's first-round pick to move up and draft Sammy Watkins. So we'll see how it turns out. They think he can come in, contribute right away, be their number one guy at wide receiver. So we'll see. From there, in the second round, Buffalo drafted Cyrus Kouandjio. I could be pronouncing that horribly.
Yeah.
But he's an offensive tackle out of Alabama, the first of 3 offensive lineman selections for the Bills. They needed to add depth here. They did that in this draft.
That was a guy, excuse me for interrupting, but that was a guy a lot of people thought Miami was going to pick in the first round. So this guy was a first-round talent, really.
First-round talent, yeah. And he fell to the second round. They say that, a lot of that has to do with some medical reports.
Yeah, he had a bad knee.
Yeah, so, he's a lineman. Find me a lineman without a bad knee, and I'll show you a guy that's not a lineman.
Yeah.
But moving on from that, Preston Brown, inside linebacker from Louisville, was selected in the third round by Buffalo. This is a guy that, depending on how things work out with Brandon Spikes, his contract situation next year, this is a guy that could be, a starter come 2015, which, give him a year to kind of, get his feet wet, get used to this whole NFL thing, and maybe you don't need Brandon Spikes next year. We'll see. Fourth round, the Bills selected a cornerback, Russ Cockrell, from Duke. Again, secondary was a concern last year for Buffalo. They added depth there, so really addressing some of their needs in these areas. In the fifth round, they selected Cyril Richardson, a guard from Baylor. Second offensive lineman they picked, guard. And having those interior linemen certainly help.
So they have a Cyril and a Cyrus.
That's correct.
And they drafted, so you can say they got Cy Youngs.
Yeah, right.
Aren't you glad we don't charge you for this, folks?
Yeah, right. No wonder why we can't get advertisers. They're running away.
Yeah.
Good pick. Again, adding depth is something that they needed, especially at offensive line. They address these needs. 2 7th-round picks rounded out for Buffalo. They selected Randall Johnson, an outside linebacker out of Florida Atlantic. To me, kind of, I don't want to say a waste of a pick because he could turn out, but, one of the things that the Bills have plenty of right now are pass rushers. And, you just added another. He might come in, contribute on special teams, but, yes, it does add a little depth in that area, but, really it's not one of your more pressing needs is to have an outside linebacker. The Bills finished with one of the more interesting picks of the draft, I thought, with Chantrell Henderson, an offensive tackle out of Miami. This was a kid going back 4 or 5 years who was a top prospect coming out of high school.
Yeah, I've heard about this guy.
And, people were talking about him in college. This guy could be a first-round pick in the NFL draft. And here he is. He falls to the bottom of the draft. And he's got the talent there. He's got the skills. Some inconsistency on the field from what I read and from what I've seen. But the main thing with this guy is off-the-field issues. And the most recent example of this came at the NFL Combine when he tested positive for marijuana. So if he can get that part of his life squared away, and with Doug Marrone, this guy Doug Marrone, former offensive lineman, can certainly coach offensive linemen. Has certainly developed a few in Buffalo in his short tenure. Chantrell Henderson could be a guy that starts for your team someday, but he's got to get his life in order, and hopefully he can do that in Buffalo.
That's it. Grow up, basically.
Yeah, that's right.
So, okay. So the draft's over. The other big story was Michael Sam getting drafted by the Rams, and I've heard enough sports talk radio people saying there was a conspiracy that somebody picked him so he wouldn't go undrafted, and ESPN, wanted, the ratings and stuff. I mean, look, the NFL draft's going to get a big rating no matter what. And yeah, the third day is different, but nobody knew when this guy was going to be drafted. So it's not like ESPN had anything special and planned. Look, they were smart. They had a camera on them. They got some emotional moments, some stuff that we don't usually see on TV. And, people made a big to-do about it, but guess what? It's over. Let's move on, folks. And we'll move on, too.
That's right.
Baseball. America's pastime. I have a column in today's print edition of the Citizen. I love saying print. Of the Citizen, and it's online, auburnpub.com, where I basically say that Yankees-Mets, the Subway Series, it's off the tracks. It's time to not play it every year. You know, one of the things that made interleague play special at the beginning was it was rare. It was the first time. You know, it was nice. Now it's every year for the Yankees and the Mets, and it's lost some of that specialness, if you want to call it that. And it's kind of become kind of routine and mundane, and the games are boring. I mean, they're long. They had a 4-hour game the other night. I mean, you know, I understand if you're a real diehard Yankees or Mets fan, you take some pride in this game because it's bragging. There's only one series that really means anything, and that's the World Series. And if the Yankees beat the Mets in the World Series like they did in 2000, then you can brag. It's a lot. But these are regular season games. They're only 1 out of 162, or how many ever they play, 4 out of 162. It's not that big a deal. I think if Major League Baseball did with these series, these so-called, quote, you know, favorite teams, where the White Sox play the Cubs and the A's play the Giants and the Dodgers play the Angels, where if, you know, the Yankees didn't play the Mets every year, maybe it was once every 3 or 4 years, again, you might get some of that specialness back where the games mean something again. But I saw a lot of empty seats at Yankee Stadium, and I know a lot of it's because the prices are so high to begin with for tickets, but still, I think it's time that baseball either needs to make some changes in the way it's aligned, and just basically say you're going to play everybody, every team, you know, every season. You're not going to play certain teams in the National League every few years. You're going to play everybody at least one time, and just get rid of this notion of interleague play, because, you know, there really is no interleague. I mean, you know, the leagues are not that separate anymore. And also another thing they need to do, going off on a different rant here, get rid of the DH, or make all the pitchers bat. Either one rule or the other. Either put the DH in both leagues or have pitchers bat in both leagues. You can't have 2 separate rules in each league, especially if you're going to be playing interleague games every day. It's a farce. We need to fix this. So, all right, end of rant. Go ahead, Robert.
On a roll, folks.
Yeah,
you should be sitting next to this guy. Steam's coming out. Can't see the camera anymore.
Okay, bad sound effects.
In regard to the Subway Series, you know, I agree with you on the interleague point. What MLB has done with the scheduling, you know, in my opinion, you know, if you really want these teams to play each other, and you really want to make it interesting, instead of having these, you know, interleague series every year, put them in the same division.
Yeah, I've thought about that. Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
I mean, you look at, you know, let's just take the Yankees, for example, and I mean, we can look at, you know, certainly other teams throughout the MLB, but, you know, the Yankees and Mets, you know, what, you know, rivalry are you giving up by swapping the Mets into the AL, you know, the AL East, you know, with the Yankees, and, you know, replacing, you know, moving, say, Toronto or some other team? You know, to me, it just makes sense that, you know, if you really want these teams to play a lot, and you see value in having these interleague series, then put them in the same division.
Yeah. I mean, can you imagine a Yankees, Mets, Red Sox, Phillies division? Or adding Baltimore too?
Yeah.
And having those teams play against each other day in, day out for a season? I mean, you'd have Yankees, Red Sox, you keep that right. That one you don't break up. Absolutely agree with you on that one. But then you'd have Red Sox, Mets, which I think would be kind of fun. You'd have Yankees, Phillies, which I think would be a fun rivalry. Baltimore, Philly would be a great rival, because the 2 cities are only about an hour or 2 away. Okay? And you could even throw D.C. in there too if you really want. And then D.C. and Baltimore could play a bunch of times. I mean, that'd be a great, you know, division right there. And then you could have division with like Pittsburgh and Cleveland and Toronto, Detroit, Cincinnati, and have like a Great Lakes division. You know, I mean, there's a lot of potential here if you realigned. And you'd have to change the playoff formats a little bit. Maybe even add, I think you could add some more teams to baseball playoffs a little bit. Maybe cut the regular season to 154 games and add some more playoffs, although I don't think the owners would like to lose 4 home games. But still, I think that it would be a good idea to cut the regular season down a little bit, and then add an extra round of playoffs. You know, you could play double headers to help save. I mean, I think that double headers are awesome. You could schedule maybe 2 or 3 double headers a year. If a manager knows in advance he's got a double header, he can structure his pitching staff for that kind of stuff. It's when you have these unannounced double headers, or, you know, because some game gets rained out or something like that, where they're not planning, that's when it gets screwy. So
yeah, it's, to me, you know, they should embrace what the NHL did. The NHL, you know, they went through realignment. This is the first year that they went through realignment, and they focused, not only on, making sure that you're trying to keep, not all, but
Right.
some of the key rivalries. And, you can still certainly have, some of these rivalries continue with just less games. But, one of the things they focused on is these geographic rivalries. Detroit moved to the Eastern Conference, is now, in
Yes.
what was known as the Eastern Conference, and is now in a division with Buffalo and, some of these other teams that, are closer to them geographically, whereas before they were playing teams like, Nashville, for example.
Yeah.
So, this really, to me, baseball should explore, really, if they want to make the game fresh, more interesting, because we've had the same divisions basically for years now. If they want to make it fresh, and spice things up, I think that's the way they have to do it. These interleague series, they just don't cut it for people, and I think you're right. It's just, these are two teams that likely, won't play in the playoffs. Certainly with interleague play, you could get a potential, World Series matchup or whatever. But, if you really want these games, look at realignment, bring these teams together. I mentioned to you before we started recording this, putting Baltimore and Washington in the same division would make great sense.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a rivalry just waiting to
You
blossom.
might lose a couple, you might lose 4 home games, but you're going to make it up in the number of people that are going to be coming to a Baltimore-Washington game.
Yeah.
As compared to like a, Colorado-Washington game.
Right.
So.
But yeah, it's we talk about all the time, the NFL and how that's really taking, that they're the #1 sport in America right now. I don't think baseball will reclaim the crown, but they could at least make things more interesting. And you look at all the divisions and the NBA, NHL, NFL, they've all gone under some sort of change, in the past decade. Baseball, not really. There's a team here and there, and that's it.
Yeah.
And I think they have to make some dramatic changes to really spice up the game.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that they moved Milwaukee out of the AL to the NL, and then they moved Houston out of the NL to the AL. I mean, it's screwy, and they need to realignment. I think would be a great idea. Maybe our next video, we'll kind of maybe do a little bit of realignment. Maybe we'll draw a map of the country up there, and we'll do that. We'll draw some divisions. I think that'd be kind of fun.
I like this idea.
Yes.
Coming next week, folks.
The map. With apologies to Dr. Sheldon Cooper on the Big Bang Theory. Fun with flags. We're going to have fun with maps, folks. It's going to be a riot. So until then, folks, we'll see you next week. Anything else you want to add, Robert?
I'm good.
All right, folks. Thanks again for watching. Please share the link, and we appreciate your support. Until next week, we'll see you later. Have a good weekend.